Thank you for being here, Grandmaster Jay.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to be here.
Great. And what I think would be important to get some of the newbies that are in the room, some of the people who may not have met you, if maybe you could give us a short description of the NFAC and set the correct table for the organization.
You know, any other time when I'm asked that question, I have to actually sit down and I have to think through my answer and I have to make sure that I give enough information that people can have a starting point or focused to see how we got to where we are today, because we didn't start off the way we are. Today's a little different. It's kind of ironic because I didn't plan it this way, and I'm pretty sure that Mr. Galinsky didn't either, because again, this conversation grew out of a series of back-end conversations, and we saw some things happening in the media, since the mainstream media now speaks on us, that seemed to be a little wrong. So we felt that it was time to bring the brain trust together and talk about it. Today is a little different. A year ago today, earlier today, a year ago, while the rest of you were still in your houses under quarantine, afraid to go outside, when the only thing that we were concerned about was whether or not the virus was going to get us. Jobs done disappeared. People scared. It's a global pandemic like we've never seen. And we've been cooped up for a while. On this day, today, a group of young men traveled to Brunswick, Georgia, unannounced, unexpected, to respond to the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah, you remember Ahmaud Arbery, brother, chased down by 3 white people, shot him down in the street with a shotgun, then lied about it. Thought they was gonna get away with it because it was a good old boy network. You see, we was cooped up too. And we got tired of hearing that. We had enough problems as it was as a society. The last thing we needed in the Trump era of racists feeling like they're empowered. I'd be goddamn if y'all gonna start chasing us down in the street and shooting us down. That was the last straw. So a group of us went down to Brunswick to exercise our Second Amendment rights and a little more. But 2 hours before we got there, they arrested them, almost like they knew we was coming. As a matter of fact, when we got there and we went to the McMichael's home, the truck that he killed Ahmaud Arbery was still sitting in the driveway. Oh, y'all remember that? That was the birth of the NFAC as you know it. Because it shocked America that Black people would arm themselves, military style, military trained to the best of their ability. And that they were sick of marching and holding hands and making promises. We were sick of it. So today makes 1 year since that day. Since that time, the video of that went viral. And it caused an avalanche of people who felt just like I did to join the NFAC. The NFAC grew exponentially between this time until July 4th, when we showed ourselves again in Stone Mountain, Georgia. We outnumbered the law enforcement. We outnumbered the National Guard. We had never seen anything like it. Because we were sending a different message. It's not that we're out to attack you, but we're getting sick and tired of leaving the defense of us in the hands of people who either pick and choose how they want to do it or choose not to do it at all. So damn it, we'll do it ourselves. And that was the birth of the NFAC. Now, once that happened, we began to realize that what we had done, in effect, was form the militia. Not a gun club, not a bunch of gun nuts, not some left-wing or right-wing organization with a political slant. but a bunch of law-abiding citizens who were exercising their constitutional right to carry arms, to assemble peacefully, and to state their grievances and be prepared in case things go south. You see, this country has a tradition of militias, left and right wing. The National Guard used to be an unorganized militia, and now it's a regulated militia. So we had formed a militia, something that this country hadn't seen of this magnitude since the 60s. And we continue to grow. And as we continue to grow, we began to realize something, that we had emerged from the quarantine into a different type of world. So it required a different type of response. The NFAC, as of this writing, is the largest all-Black militia in the world, with chapters in the UK, Africa, the Caribbean, South America, and as of recently, we have chapters or chapter representatives in every state in the United States. That's who we are. Our stated mission, as we stated many times before, is the defense of the Black race, the education of the Black race with regards to responsible ownership and utilization of firearms. But most importantly, the policing of the Black race, community policing, self-policing, those type of things. That is our agreed upon mission. Anything else is an outright lie. And that's who we are, the NFAC. I am the Supreme Commander and the founder of the organization, but I am not alone in the authority. I have sub-commanders, and of course, we have our own command structure. We've been described as paramilitary. We are not. We are a militant organization, but we are not racist. We have not been labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. As a matter of fact, every other militia in this country wears that title except us. We have a zero incident record of killing anyone, shooting at anyone, having anybody arrested except for me. We'll talk about that later. And then, of course, we have not destroyed any property. But what have we done? As I've said many times before, when you speak effectively to power with power, intelligently, laws get changed. They either get changed for the better, or they get changed in response for the worse. When the Black Panthers decided they wanted to march on the State House in California, the response was the deprivation of Second Amendment rights to this day of the citizens of the state of California, the lobbying by the NRA for gun laws against those of us who would enjoy them same as they would. Well, here we are a year later on this day, the birthday of this organization, the day that we went down to Brunswick. Well, let's see. You can no longer assemble in Stone Mountain. No one can. The Ku Klux Klan was told that for the first time in 60 years, you cannot come here and have your normal event. They said, why? Because we changed the laws because of what happened last year when that Black militia came in here. They changed the laws. In Oklahoma and in Florida, they just passed the law that it is legal for someone to run over you with their car if you are protesting in the street. Interesting. The no-knock warrants are now outlawed in the state of Kentucky after 2 incursions by the NFAC on behalf of Breonna Taylor that involved me going head-to-head with the governor, the attorney general, the mayor, the police chief, and everybody else who had something to do with that girl's murder. And the costing of $165 million and $13.5 million in revenue by our appearing at the Kentucky Derby, which they quietly had last week without a whole lot of fanfare. We left such an impression that the press had to ask, are you coming back? We had no reason to come back. The NFAC is who we are. I hope I've answered your question.
Thanks for the explanations, and I want to go into what you're experiencing about the arrest in a few minutes, but I want to open up for anybody that's in the room that would like to ask a question or has a comment that's worth throwing in the mix? Do not be bashful. The awkward pause is welcome. All right. Well, that's interesting. All right. Well, we've got a new person coming in the room now. So let's get to let's welcome our new attendee. And Emma, thank you for being with us. Didn't welcome you earlier. Welcome new person who's labeled as iPhone. So let's talk about then, if we don't have questions yet, maybe we'll get them, maybe we won't. We got plenty to talk about. Tell us about the current arrest. Now, you and I have been talking about this, your arrest and what you're facing right now, and also the fact that there's a regime change here with as of January 20th or through the election, and how that has affected what you've been going through with your case.
First of all, I'm not going to discuss in detail the details of my case because it's ongoing. I am still under one federal indictment for allegedly pointing a weapon at deputized police officers who are also supposedly serving as federal officers at the same time. The state of Kentucky also decided to jump on and throw on a charge of wanton endangerment, which was the same charge they gave to the officer who fired the shots into Breonna Taylor's home. But other than that, I will not go into detail as you just mentioned, because that would not be intelligent of me, whether or not this is live or whether or not you broadcast it later. What I will tell you is this, and this is public knowledge, and this is something that you can do your own research. All of last year, we had a 0 incident record. The NFAC broke no laws. The NFAC actually operated within the construct of the law to achieve what we did, which was 6 successful formations of armed citizens in an organized militant style that addressed issues in the community. As you can tell, this probably pissed off a lot of law enforcement because there was nothing they could do. They tried behind the scenes by pulling out, old statutes and laws, trying to slow us down, but we had the Constitution on our side. So every time that there was some type of roadblock put in front of us, we just politely negotiated around it because we understood law precedent and so forth. It was very interesting. In the early days of December of last year, I was in Atlanta. I was receiving the Global Leadership Protection Award. As a matter of fact, it was a beautiful ceremony. And if you all would like to also know, it was my birthday at the same time. So I was showered with gifts from all of the supporters of the NFAC and those who shared the vision of a liberated and a free people. And life was pretty good. I returned to my residence the next day. And of course, if you know anything about me, if you don't, I hosted a nightly podcast called Facts Over Feelings that was pretty popular. About 121,000 people tuned in. And I came back and I did my episode. I was in the middle of a teaching session about the destruction of Black civilization by Chancellor Williams. And went to bed. It was a rather normal night. Yes, it was. Until I was awakened 5 o'clock in the morning by the sound of a drone hovering over my face in my bedroom. Mind you, I live in a 2-story house. I was kind of wondering how the drone got in my bedroom. But then was greeted by a lovely voice on a bullhorn that said, "John Johnson, this is the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest. Come out." Very interesting. Couldn't understand why the FBI would have a warrant for my arrest. Very interesting. So rather than going out in a hail of bullets, because ironically, they came to my house at the same time and on the same day that they raided Fred Hampton's home and killed him in a hail of gunfire in the wee early morning hours. It was kind of ironic, but we'll save that for later. Of course, since I had done nothing wrong, I came down and met with the folks who were kind enough to let me know that this was a joint task force of the federal government, a new task force that was formed to deal with organizations that have what they call an anti-government theology. That's interesting. We didn't espouse an anti-government theology, but I guess because we were an armed militia, we had the potential to. So you can imagine that I was rather shocked when they told me that I had pointed a weapon. When anyone who knows anything about the NFAC, and we've been covered on every major media channel, and there's plenty of footage where I always say, never point your weapon at anyone, and only use your weapon in self-defense. Find it rather interesting that I would suddenly take leave of my own advice. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to see the proof. And so for the last 6 months, I've been in a dance with the US government at the federal level and at the state level also, where we try to work through what's real and what's not. Mr. Galensi talked about a regime change. Let us be clear here, people. The NFAC was born out of the atmosphere of the Trump administration. Anyone who disagrees with me, I don't know where you were for the last 4 years. You see, the trick of it is this: I'm not young. I'm almost 60 years old. So I know when I see something coming back that I haven't seen in a while. We saw things coming back in abundance that we as a Black people hadn't seen in a while. Lynchings were on the rise. All of a sudden, Black men were lynching themselves. I don't know when this became a fad, but we're finding people lynched all over the place. Seemed like there were more shootings by police that just they hope was swept under the rug, like the 50s and the 60s again. All of this happened under the Trump administration. When the Biden administration comes in, they're a much softer number. And of course, more liberal. They're not like the Trump folks. And neither are the people that they appointed into some of these positions, as you've noticed already by some of the indictments that are being handed out to people that the Trump administration would not have batted an eye at. So the new regime has come in. And yes, I know how it can be when you know you're losing, so you want to leave something for the incoming people to deal with. Some people would say that the NFAC there's no need for us right now. Things have calmed down, that, we can fall back. You see, we're not the ones who ran up in the Capitol. We're not the ones that turned out that our leader was an informant for the FBI for 6 years and setting people up. We're not the ones that conspired with terrorist groups. As a matter of fact, we're the ones who've done nothing. We've been the most peaceful. Yet since this case has started, it's been slowly meandering through the court systems. In the meantime, I have been forbidden to speak on social media, which is akin to telling me can't use telephone. I have been silenced. I don't know what that has to do with me pointing a weapon, but that's what they said was a condition of me being free until we make it to a courtroom. That's interesting. I'm also not allowed to possess a firearm, though I'm the leader of an armed militia. Interesting. I mean, I can't do my job. And then last but not least, I'm prohibited from traveling. It's just, there was an argument not too long ago that when you begin to restrict constitutional rights, then what you're actually doing is penalizing people by depriving them of their rights for crimes they haven't committed. It's kind of like those people who don't pay their child support, so you suspend their passport. You restrict their freedom of movement. You're penalizing them for a debt. You're not supposed to be able to do that under the human rights laws. But then again, this is the United States of America. And until we have our own house, you have to play by the rules of this house. Play them smartly, but still play by the rules, which is another thing that I'm going to touch on very quickly as far as this court case is concerned. If you study history, any Black person who stood up and spoken on behalf of the race, unified the race, inspired the race, and began to organize the race in a collective fashion that went beyond singing and throwing rocks at people. When we started talking about collective economics, when we started talking about amassing our voting political power to the point that unless we get something out of the deal, you get no vote. We have a list if you want our support. Every other group does that. The Jewish PAC does that. You all know I ran for the presidency. I had to stand in front of those people too. There's no problem with us having that same structure in place. But anytime someone starts to talk like that, the government rolls out its old playbook. And I've said this many times before, isn't it ironic that character assassination, financial destruction, eventual incarceration, and then the murder or the killing or the sudden death of anyone that fulfills what J. Edgar Hoover said? What is your worst nightmare? Black unity at the hands of a charismatic Black male that could electrify the Black nationalist movement. So, as it stands right now, I'm still going through the process. They did drop 4 out of the 5 of charges because, well, they didn't want to tell me. It was when we began asking questions. Those numbers dropped from 5 to 1, but we're still dealing with that. And I will let you all know it is not something that I take lightly. Because of a provision in federal law, something very simple can result in 20 years in prison. There's just a couple of things I want to leave you with. If I was such a threat at the Derby on September the 4th, and I had done these things, first of all, I'm the first Black man in history to point a weapon at police and live. Wow, people are killed for less. They've been killed for this highlighter. They've been killed for a cell phone. They've been killed for a sandwich in their hand. But I'm supposed to have had an AR-15 fully loaded with a scope and a flashlight and pointed it at all these cops. And I lived. Matter of fact, I lived long enough to come back a month later and speak at the interim police chief's inauguration. I even got a standing ovation, surrounded in a room full of police and detectives. If I was such a threat, I wonder why I didn't get arrested then. And we got that on video. Mm-hmm. And then after that, came back to the city to talk about a community program where we were going to start helping with community policing. They didn't get me then either. So what was the urgency in December that all of a sudden they had to come get me? Wouldn't be because I was about to plan the million guns formation, which would have been the next thing that the NFAC was planning to do. I just want to lay that out there for you. It's business as usual in the United States. And that is why I will not go into detail about what's going on behind the scenes. As I said before, as long as I'm in America and I've always operated within the confines of the law, then I am operating within the confines of the law in the justice system right now.
Becky Savell, welcome, and thank you, Grandmaster Jay. If anybody wants to type a question into the chat, you're more than welcome to. If anybody's got a question or a thought or response to share, you can speak it as well. There we go. Great. Emily has her hand up. So thanks, Emily. Emily, I don't know if you were here for my introduction. 15 words or less, you know, who you are, and then the question. And we've been through this before where some people will put a 5-minute paragraph about themselves into the question. We're not doing that. But I do want to know who you are, you know, 15 words or less, so we can get a little bit of a context. Thank you. I got to unmute you. I got to ask you unmute. Are you good to go? You got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, y'all can hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, peace, good people. What's going on? Thank you for bringing me in, and peace, brother. I wanted to just come in and take the opportunity to see you and hear you and receive whatever you had to say. I have 3 questions. I'm just gonna ask one, and then you let me know later if I can ask the next ones. My first one, oh, sorry, supposed to say something about myself, right? What to say? Born Uganda, raised Harlem, New York City, adopted into the network of the New York chapter Black Panther Party, part of the youth activist group Impact Repertory Theater, leadership training, conflict resolution, critical thinking, community service, self-development, alongside performing arts, hip hop artist, a content creator, and now digital producer. My first question is, you've mentioned about constitutional rights in a number of your responses. I was happy to hear that. And I've read that you're a student of history, and you mentioned that as well. My question is, to what extent do you study constitutional rights, And to what extent is that and that specifically in political education a part of your organization, and to what extent is that applied to on the ground organizing and perhaps in the senses of dealing with the hierarchy of law enforcement, land acquisition, prevention of arrest, post arrest. I'm just interested to hear your mentality as it pertains to constitutional rights in the proactive sense, rather than how people usually use it in the defensive manner, and to talk about how it's taken away.
Well, first of all, sister, I want to thank you for taking the time out to even sit down and ask not a question. I will not answer everything you asked, because what you asked is not a question. It would be a dissertation on our methodologies that I do not reveal to the public, as I've said for almost a year. What I will tell you is this: a student, I'm far beyond a student. I'm a former presidential candidate. So trust me, if it's one thing that I've worked and labored in, it's constitutional law, political law, and of course, international law, world court law. If you studied anything about the NFAC, and you can go to my website, or you can go to my YouTube channel, because that's where you'll find it. I taught for an entire year based on several books, and the most key one of those is The Destruction of the Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. I would encourage you to pick up a copy, and in the very back of that book, in the very last chapter, is he talks about the master plan. The master plan is a 5-step program that would actually create a Black ethno nation and address us in several different pillars that include not just political, but financial, agricultural. And the first piece that I picked up was the militant side of it. You see, the NFAC is not the end result for us. It's just one piece. This was the first manifestation of a 5-piece program that we laid out all last year before we started doing the actual militia stuff. Because in order for us to accomplish the other pieces, we have to be able to protect what we're going to do. And that involves an actual exodus from this place. So in order to do that, we would have to declare ourselves a nation. We would have to go through self-declaration. We would have to be recognized in the world court. These are some things that we've already covered on Mr. Galinsky's show in the past, and we've gone into great detail. I would encourage you to go and look at some of the classes that I've actually taught for people. Some of those classes up to 6,000, 7,000 people at a time about the very things. They're separate classes. Our methodology on the ground, our approach to how we not only utilize constitutional law to our advantage, not in a defensive measure, but also to get certain things done. I'll give you an example. When the NFAC found itself being threatened by Congressman Higgins of Louisiana, who we had no clue who this man was, a sitting congressman made a threat against US citizens for simply exercising their constitutional rights. That was the core of his threat. Our response was to exercise our constitutional rights with a catch. It was also to take on the city behind the scenes, because they had several unconstitutional provisions at the local level that had never been challenged before and successfully mitigated. And we won those. We won those in the courts off scene, and then we turned around and still exercised our rights there. The goal of that was showing them that not only did we understand constitutional precedents as it applied to cases that had already been fought before, so you couldn't run the same game on us again, but it also gave us a leg up in how they operated in their methodology that they would use to try to cripple any type of a forward motion in our particular organization. I hope I've answered your question. That's as much detail as I can go into without going into a dissertation, which I will not do on this particular call.
Thank you. You good, Emma?
Hey, good. Should I need to wait my turn for another one?
Well, I'm going to hold that thought 1 second. I'm going to gear up and say hello, Goldie, welcome. And anybody else, if you've got questions, I'm going to throw it to Emma one more time, and you can cue it up in your mind. If you got a question, you can either type it in or wait until this next question's over and ask. But go ahead, Emma. I know you're ready.
All right. My next question is: I see obviously a lot of male revolutionary icons and iconography and representation on the wall behind you, but I don't really see any women. So my question is, what women revolutionary icons, friends, family, just what women have inspired you and informed your work ongoing and just your ongoing growth as a person?
Well, first of all, I don't separate activists by sex. That's the first thing. Second, what you see behind me are actually works that were given to me by people who have come out to express their appreciation for the work that we've done. That's why you don't see any women, because I'm never in the appearance of a woman. This is the actual broadcast studio for my show Facts Over Feelings that I'm talking to you from. When I started this was a blank wall. Every one of these paintings has been crafted by someone that I did not know, that was so moved by what we were doing that they presented them to me. As far as women within the movement, as I said, I don't separate sex, whether it's Angie Davis, whether it's Queen Nzinga. I don't look at sex. I look at the work that you put in, the goals that are achieved. And throughout history, those people are numerous, whether they're in the Black Panthers, whether they were in Africa during the Zulu movement, it doesn't make a difference. Whoever stepped up and did the job are the folks that I give respect to. And let me add to that before I get off of that. Within our organization, it's the same way. We don't separate. The women are not relegated to one, to particular type of position. Leaders are leaders. Soldiers are soldiers. Doctors are doctors. Medics are medics. Communication is communication. We don't play the sexist game over here. We don't tolerate that.
That's good to hear.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks.
Mhm.
Becky or Goldie, might you have a question?
How can we keep up with, or be able, I'm reading a question popped up, but it disappeared.
Oh, okay. Oh, the question was, and there was, how can we keep up with your case? I understand you can't speak on it currently since it's open, but will we be able to receive and share updates from someone or from NFAC itself about your case?
Well, first of all, NFAC is not on trial. John Fitzgerald Johnson is on trial. This is not a case against the militia. This is a case that they brought against me personally. It was done not because of anything the organization did. This crime is alleged to have been something that I did. So there are no updates that come from the NFAC. The NFAC has no voice in my personal case. Since this is a federal case, all records regarding this case that are available to the public are available on the Department of Justice website. All you have to do is go in and search by my name. As a matter of fact, you can search by my legal name, John Fitzgerald Johnson, or Grandmaster J. They made it real easy for you to follow along. It helps if you have an understanding of federal judicial procedure, because it's quite different from the state processes. At the state level, again, the state of Kentucky has been gracious enough to make those records public online also. Other than that, there are no updates that I give to the public. There's no blow by blow. To be honest with you, I think that's our problem as a society. We have become drunk on information, and a lot of us are poor custodians of it. As I said at the beginning of this broadcast, I would not go into detail about my case because I understand the value of certain information behind closed doors and how it can come back to haunt you. And because I'm a quote unquote public figure and a rather outspoken one, I do not want to find myself defending my own words. So those outlets are available for those folks who want to keep up with the case. As you probably already, anyone you guys keep up with me before, I've been removed from social media. My Instagram accounts have been shut down. Facebook, I have been shut down. I think I've got a Twitter account that I can't use. And there is my YouTube account, which is still standing, but it's pretty much a repository of all of my old shows. So you can't follow me on social media. You can't do that. So you can, and I'm pretty much glad that you can't, because social media has become something that should be shut down for about a year until we all learn to act like humans with backbone again, instead of being keyboard cowards. But you can't follow me there. What you can do is you can request information directly from my website, info@thegrandmasterj.com. Or as a matter of fact, we do provide some updates. And I was hoping I wouldn't even have to talk about this, but it's kind of the only way that you can really get information now. And that's through the informational updates on my GoFundMe site. So we do issue out updates there because those folks have donated to my legal defense, and they have a right to know what's going on with the money that they've invested. So an update went out the other day, pretty much tells you how many charges I'm facing. It tells you when my next court date is. It tells you where that court date is going to be, whether it's going to be physical or virtual. It tells you whether or not it's a hearing or, where we are in the process, things of that nature. But other than that, you're really not going to be able to get the nitty-gritty details of what's going on with this particular case. Number one, because of the nature of it, it's rare that the state and the federal go after someone at the same time for one offense. So this is a very interesting case, and they're tiptoeing through it. So you'd be hard pressed to get details.
All right. Thanks for the question, Nina. Anyone? Goldie, Becky, Katha, Will, Kyle?
I jumped on late, so I'll take a pass, but it's always a pleasure to.
Yeah, you were on our, Goldie was on our.
He's breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, Goldie was on our last call. Your audio broke up a little bit, Goldie. Okay, Becky.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the invitation tonight. And I think what you have to communicate is very compelling. I did go to your website to register. I'm just waiting to be allowed in. So I was not able to really get any further information before the broadcast tonight. But I am looking forward to knowing more about not only you, but also about the case that you are involved in. I'm just sort of reading very quickly here. And I think that you're really a fantastic spokesperson. So I'm just wondering, how do you envision, I know that you have things that you are focused on currently that hold a lot of brevity in the current situation politically. How do you envision your future as a voice for the message that you are your mission and your message?
Becky, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. I would have to ask you, which website did you attempt to register for?
I did go to the NFAC.
I'm sorry, folks. You'll never get in.
Okay.
The Black NFAC website is for our members, our actual members. That is not for the public. That's why you can't see anything. But it's interesting because if you had come across and we let you in, everyone would be pointing fingers like, okay, this is an all Black organization. Who did it? So glad that you told me that. But I am always willing to provide information. The emails that are sent to info@blacknfac.com. If you ask, let's say we want a copy of one of our policy letters regarding sexual harassment, or if you would like to know more about, our policies or our stance on certain issues, we were more than happy to provide you with that information. But no, that website is for members only. It is not for the public.
All right, thank you.
Now, and so sorry to break the news, but to answer your question, though, and that's a good question. We live in an upside down society. It's strange. When I was in the military, if I can be adult here for a second, we had a saying, and I don't know how to say this any other way. And anyone who has any military in your family, they curse like sailors and so forth. So here it comes. Get ready. You F up, you move up. I was actually going to say the word, but I thought about it. And that's what it was. And I watched people in the military who did the worst things and they got promoted. And then the good guys always got crapped on. So I kind of, I didn't understand that. But in society, people tend to not give credibility or lend you the credence that you deserve until something horrible happens, like you survive a shooting, or you were almost in a plane crash, or thank God that ship didn't go down with you. No matter what you're doing, suddenly everyone's on board with it because you survived a tribulation. I do believe that if I'm successful in surviving this battle with the United States government and the state of Kentucky, for whatever the reasons, the core reasons may be for them bringing the case, because of the fact that they came after the leader of the Black militia and that we won, what would happen is I would then take my place because I would have been baptized by fire. You understand this is how our society functions. This is not something that I would have to go out and do. I watched what happened. People are more moved. People are more supportive when you are dead and cold and on the ground than they are when you're walking around. I wonder today, given the type of society that we have, if the response to them doing to Malcolm X or doing to Martin Luther King what they did with me, what they're doing right now, would people, be so back and forth and on the fence and have an opinion or divided, or, would they be comfortable in the captivity of their minds that they think they can actually distance themselves? Because that's what we do today. They didn't do that 60 years ago. We live in a different time. So when someone like myself, who appears to be a throwback, but I'm not, I'm a product of this environment. You see, it can happen again. And it can happen today. We have not arrived as a society, and we need to stop deceiving ourselves. We have not arrived. So therefore, when someone like me comes along and then is quote unquote put through the fire, now all of a sudden, I'm in a position where the words now carry the weight and the gravity that it needed to carry all along. That is what's going to happen. But see, society has demonstrated time and time again that they never let that happen, because those individuals either end up incarcerated for a very long time, even if unjustly, or they end up dead or exiled. Take your pick. If I survive this legal battle, given the momentum that we had before, and given the plans that we had started to formulate in the 5 towers that I talked about, given the discussions that are already underway in the UK and in Africa, and given the alliances that we've built overseas, I would submit to you that I'll probably hit the ground running again, but at a faster pace and with more of a weight behind the urgency that we get this project accomplished. That is what I think will happen in the long run.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Becky. Thank you, Grandmaster Jay. And one of our comments is preach, somewhere about 4 minutes ago. Preach.
Am I preaching? I didn't know I was preaching.
You're muted, Phil. Philip, if you're trying to tell us something, you're still muted. No, one more time. Give it a shot. Unmute yourself.
All right. Grandmaster Jay, do you have a joke? Do you have a lighter side of yourself? Do you have a joke you can tell us?
I got a joke for you.
There you go.
So here's what happened. So it's Sunday morning. The church is packed. Everybody's seated. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody. They got the deacons board. They got the Phillips ministry. They got the Barnabas ministry, the children's church. Everybody's there. The choir was in full effect. Even the people who never show up showed up. We thought it was Mother's Day. The pastor was behind the pulpit ready to drop the word. Everybody was ready. I had my hand on that dollar. You know that dollar you take with you? All of a sudden, 2 men entered the church. They were wearing pitch black trench coats, and they was carrying submachine guns. And one of them stood at the back of the church, and one of them stood at the front of the church. And the preacher looked, and he said, "What do you want?" And the guy at the front said, "Everybody who not ready to die for Jesus, you can leave right now." Oh, it was a stampede like you wouldn't imagine. You know how many exits they got? We didn't know they had that many exits. The choir was running out the back. People was running out the side door. Even the little communion door was open. Somebody dived in the dump with. When it was all said and done, there was only 3 people left. The dude behind the organ, because he was getting paid. One of the elders, because he couldn't walk, he had a walker, and they ran over that. That's gone. So he's sitting there. And the preacher was standing fast. At that point, the brother with the gun said, "You may now begin church. All the hypocrites have left the building."
Yes. Yes. More of a fable as a joke should teach. Yes.
I hope that put something on your mind and made you laugh. A lot of people in this movement, a lot of people that say they want liberation, a lot of people that say they want reparations, a lot of people say they want restitution, a lot of people say, but a lot of people really don't have the backbone to do, because they want to have their cake and eat it too. Oh, you want to go out and protest and raise the roof and let them know how you feel. But then you want to go home at night and go to bed, and watch TV and, charge your phone and we'll do it again tomorrow. That's not how change happens. Change only happens when people are uncomfortable. You only change when you're uncomfortable. And just like I said before, people acclimate to punishment. You get used to it. So you have to up the game sometimes. And this country was built on the backbone of slaves and the gun. Europe conquered the world with the gun. Laws have been changed because of the gun. And even now, human rights are being exacted against our own people at the end of a gun. So when you begin to organize yourselves to achieve those same goals that you always wanted, no matter what you are on here for, no matter what your particular persuasion, whether you're pushing whatever agenda or whatever program or whatever your cause is, when they don't listen to you, you don't go out and commit crimes. You don't go out and destroy stuff. Not unless you're destroying it for good. And I've said this many times, and Martin Luther King said the same thing. I'm gonna say this before I go. I'm sick and tired of people who have become so comfortable in this misperception of Dr. King. Like he was this peace-loving, daisy-picking, throwing flowers. Oh, y'all fella. No, that was not him. He was smart. Because he said there's no way we could win an armed conflict in America. We're outnumbered. The smart thing to do would be to sit down and work along with these people and try to find some middle ground. He tried that. He even gave a speech about it in 63 that y'all don't want to let go of. But in 1968, he came back and he said, I feel that my dream has become a nightmare and that we have integrated into a burning house. And then they killed him. You see, this world that we live in today, as technologically advanced as it has become, we have not advanced as a people. We have not elevated as a civilization. For all our brain power, for all our wealth, we still haven't figured out how to unify. Some of us don't want to, but there are those like myself who've walked in many roles in this world. Now see that, just like the sister said from the Black Panthers earlier, you have to have some type of methodology of how you're going to use law to your advantage, not just in a defensive mode, but in an offensive mode, to tear down systems, to tear down systemic racism, to tear down institutionalized practices that are now recognized as law. Nobody wants to hear the truth, but don't nobody want to do nothing about it, which is even worse.
We are going to close at the top of the hour, and Emma's got her hand up. So Emma, with your last question, and if we have time for one more after that, not, then we'll give you the final statement, Grandmaster Jay. But Emma Lee, go ahead, unmute yourself. I just tapped it, and then you should be good to go.
Thank you. Those are some words right there. That was, yeah, word. I know hip hop is part of your background. Is present hip hop culture still in your, daily digest? Can you tell us like who you like to listen to? And I know you have a lot of other, seemingly more important things on your mind, but do you have a role or see a prominent position for culture and things like hip hop and the way the energy weaves throughout our community so pervasively? Do you have any type of role with that in what you do? Or is it more so just you like the artists you like and, work with who you work with, and, that's something separate from you?
So I'm going to answer your question backwards. That's a great question. It's just what you said at the end. I work with who I want to work with. As far as artists today, and I just talked about this on allhiphop.com interview with Chuck Creekmore, but I don't have a problem repeating it here because you asked. Throughout years and years and years of turmoils in this country, of ups and downs for all races, music has always reflected the culture. During the 60s, you had songs like Say It Loud and Black and I'm Proud, Give Peace a Chance. You had all kinds of songs. And there were even artists who switched up their styles just to reflect the times. Marvin Gaye did it, Tammy Terrell,
Right.
everyone. As we've gone through the phases with the Rodney King situation that happened out in LA, you had Public Enemy, rose to the occasion with Fight the Power. You understand? And Spike Lee did Malcolm X. They reflected the times that we lived in. Okay. Unfortunately, somewhere around the time when the young man was killed in New York, where he was shot 40 times, when that happened.
Yeah.
Amadou
The number
Diallo.
one hip hop song was Like a Lollipop by Lil Wayne. So hip hop was no longer reflecting the streets, so to speak. It was not reflecting the culture. It was not reflecting our community. It had truly morphed into what it is today, the music business. Hip hop is a culture. Music has become a business that is completely separate and detached from true hip hop. It's interesting you asked your question because right before the pandemic hit, I was working along with Chief Rocker Busy Bee and a few of the other OGs to build a hip hop museum, which is being built up in Brooklyn, the Bronx, as we speak. The city of New York has already committed a few $1 million. I won't give out the number to that project. And we were in the process of actually doing what you said, making sure that there was some type of a relevant hip hop curriculum that could be injected into scholastic structures all over the country and having a focal place for people to come and actually see, and some of the paraphernalia, and everyone donated stuff. All kind of stuff has been donated to that museum, things that will be relevant to hip hop. Maybe they don't mean a thing to the rest of the world, but if you came to the hip hop museum, you expect to see, like for instance, Death Row donated the actual chair, the electrical chair, complete with the red carpet and the whole thing. That Snoop Dogg donated the shirt that he wore in Doggy Style when he did his first video. Different people have donated different things. Mr. Mays from The Source magazine is one of the coordinators for that. So I was heavily involved in the restoration or the saving of the history of hip hop before the quarantine hit. And as I said earlier, we've emerged into a different world. And part of that world is, number one, the music still doesn't reflect the times. With everything that happened with us, there was no real music that reflected what was happening in the streets. So I would say that hip hop, even in the last month or so, I've seen a few songs that have tried to step up. But as far as hip hop speaking to the times, they're not. Who am I listening to today? It's interesting because I listen to a lot of these upcoming artists that display lyrical ability. There's a young man, Polo G. I was listening to him before anyone had ever heard of him. There's another young lady out of New York, the Goddess MC. These are all people who are actually talking about what's going on. It's sad to say, but there's a white guy up in Canada. I think his name is Tom McDonald. He's got a song called Facts Your Feelings. And he sounds like Eminem. But he's talking about relevant stuff today. So
you can't be more white than Tom McDonald in Canada, bro.
I'm sorry?
I said you can't be more white than Tom McDonald.
You know what I mean? The name alone, when they told me Tom McDonald, from where? Canada. Oh, this is gonna be good. I had to hear it. And when I heard it, I could not believe, I couldn't stop my head from bobbing. I was trying not to bob, but he hit me so hard. So what I'm saying is he was speaking to the times. And in hip hop today, it's become, the music has taken precedent when that's not what it was about. But that's okay. So as far as, are they connected today? No. Can they get connected? Yes. Are they waking up? Yes. But the people who control the record labels and the people who control the dollars, they don't want to hear that because it forces them to deal with an uncomfortable truth. Nobody wants a song that's going to remind us of the fact that some of us are standing on the wealth that we got and we didn't get it fairly. And we don't want to redistribute it. We like being greedy. That's one of the parts that Americans love. We love being greedy. I got more than you. Really? But this guy's got nothing and you don't think there's nothing wrong with that? Okay. So hip hop, and I said this before, and I said when someone comes up with the anthem, the NFAC will support it. And I've had quite a few songs sent to me on the back end. So just like back in the day, I find myself sitting back, I play it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. Next. So haven't heard it yet. And there are a few major artists in hip hop that have even reached out to us about doing something, but I haven't received anything yet. So ears are always open. As far as the program ourselves, having a piece that's culturally sensitive, the 5-point program that I talked about that's detailed in the Destruction of Black Civilization talks about the building of the cultural piece, not just the music, the art, your literature, your poetry from within our own civilization that we can learn, we can glean, and we can share. Hip hop is a part of that. So it would only be integral that we have those individuals who are the most knowledgeable to be at the table to make sure that that too is taught from our perspective, not from the perspective of record companies.
Thank you. Every time. Wonderful answer. In the chat, Will Hopkins says, thank you, Grandmaster Jay and Robert, for a great evening. Thanks also to everyone who asked questions for guiding a great discussion. And as we're closing, Nina Dicker says, thank God for Grandmaster Jay. You always give me so much to deeply think about. Thank you for everything you do. So Grandmaster Jay, one final statement or thought that you could leave us with?
You know, as I said before earlier tonight, a year ago tonight, I was on the front yard of the McMichaels, dressed in combat gear with an AR-15 and a 30-round clip, and I was angry. And that was a year ago today. And they just indicted those men at the federal level for killing that boy. The same way they just indicted the police officer in Minneapolis at the federal level. And the same way they've indicted the officers down in Louisville, and they're investigating that police department. I would say that to anyone who thinks for 2 seconds that you can't make a difference, not just a difference in your city, not just a difference in your country, but a difference in the collective mind of the people. If that is the voice that you're hearing, don't let anyone talk you out of it. Don't let anyone discourage you to the point where you become paralyzed. And most importantly, don't let anyone take you backwards because they're afraid to go forward. We're going to lose some to get there, but isn't that how we got here in the first place? I have nothing but love for everybody. I love unconditionally. I find it interesting that history is not repeating itself. People are repeating history. That's my thought for tonight. I'm going to leave you with that. If you'd like to donate to my legal defense fund, I'm pretty sure Mr. Galinsky will be happy to provide the GoFundMe link. If you'd like to donate to the NFAC, you can go to our website at blacknfac.com and feel free to donate to our 55K Army. We are a self-finance organization. We are not a nonprofit, so we're not enjoying the benefits that a lot of 501c enjoy. If you'd like to know more, you can also shoot an informational question to that email. But I also encourage everybody to remember this. There was a time before the internet. There was a time before cell phones. There was a time before any of this. And it forced us to get to know each other and to treat each other as people. And I think technology has turned us into something else. And it's very sad to say because I operate in the real world, not in a virtual world. And a lot of people don't think that the real world exists until it comes knocking on your door to give you your vaccine. I'm gonna leave you at that. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. You're getting a lot of thank yous in our comments too as well. Kyle, thanks you, Sharice, Katha, and thanks everybody for being on. We're gonna do this again. It's an opportunity, like I said, to hear it straight from the source and not get this twisted media putting alternative thoughts into our heads. So Grandmaster Jay, thanks for taking the time. And everybody, thank you for joining us. Peace, everyone.
Thank you.